Live. Go.
Just
Welcome to your awakening. Please take calm as your reality is adjusted.
Doing it again. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back once again. Another edition of Sol Excalibre on this Moon Day evening. Another edition of Cough and Splutter, and forget to click the screen share button. Yeah, get on with it. Welcome back on the 10th of the 8th, 2020. We're certainly into August now. It's not going to be very long before you can start experiencing the joys of surfing the second wave. Yes, as we've spoken about recently, and I was talking about last week, suggesting that one of the ways you can try and connect with people, maybe plant a seed here and there, is by suggesting things to them that are going to happen fairly soonish, so that when they start seeing them coming up in the news, they're like, "Oh yeah, he mentioned that the other week." Yeah. And now the news media is starting to do the, "Are we ready for the second wave? Is the second wave going to be worse than the last one? Oh no, what are we going to?" So they're now starting to flood the media environment ready for the coming of September as we get to the end of August, the end of harvest season, and that seasonal yearly clock change. Well, not that the hour changes on the clock, but just that seasonal change going from the summer into the harvest season and into the slow decline into winter, the slow spiral down into winter. They are certainly pushing the media to feed that second wave meme at the moment. And hopefully I'll remember to come back to mentioning about memes again, because this week, there's been quite a bit of stuff going on over this week. I'm sure you're probably quite aware, certainly the people that come and tune into these shows are quite aware of all this kind of stuff that happens, and certainly the way the media presents it. Yeah, there's been a few things over this week. A couple of things I'll mention that we might get more into a bit later. But the massive explosion in Beirut, in Lebanon, and the very unfortunate, highly coincidental situation around that event, of how it just so happens that it was, oh so conveniently that the stuff was there to create such a massive catastrophe, and the grain was stored there, and that's the main port for the city, and all these potential problems and ramifications that are going to come from that event. And today they announced that a big chunk of the Lebanon government is going to be resigning because of the implications of the situation. As in, if that stuff was supposedly stored there, who okayed it to be stored there for so long, and didn't anybody wonder about the safety of it, etc., etc.? Yeah, highly convenient situation for others as well. That was just one thing. I'm sure most people have seen all the imagery, and it was shocking imagery of this explosion and the situation afterwards. Good bang for your buck for the summer, and certainly a good trauma shock in the midst of the slowly snowballing, creeping death meme of the virus. Yeah, the virus is this steady creeping effect. It's like a slow motion car crash taking place over an entire year at least. It's going to be multiple, but what with it, what we've experienced so far is approximately 8 months worth of this slowly drawn out, flatten the curve. Where's the curvature? Yeah, this slowly drawn out traumatizing effect. Whereas roughly in the middle of the year, certainly the middle of the summer, the height of summer, you get this boom to suddenly shock you all back to some form of traumatic reality. So, yeah, highly coincidental and conveniently timed event to flood the media with. And then over the last week, another piece that adds into a lot of the human trafficking and paedophilia, institutionalized paedophilia agenda, the normalizing of the sexualization of children, grooming, all this kind of stuff gets put on front stage again when a child's toy turns out to have a hidden button that causes the doll to emit gasping and sexual groaning kind of sounds. And that button, there's no information on the packaging about that button's existence. You know, supposedly the doll just does singing noises when you press its belly. But unbeknownst to any parent that didn't examine the object, if they just read the packaging, they wouldn't know that other button was there. So that brings in that whole Petergeddon thread again into front and center and adds into the propaganda narrative from the groups such as QAnon. Trump's going to deal with the problem. They're dealing with the institutionalized pedophilia and the deep states, nasty people and all that. Oh, they're going to arrest them all. Any moment now, they're going to arrest them all. And I know there have been some arrests. And there has been a lot of action taken over the last year, not just by Trump and his administration, but in other places around the world. There's been a lot more action taking place in addressing the human trafficking around the globe. You know, there's been a few cases around the world of major networks being busted recently and things like that. Well, I say recently, over the last year plus at least. But it's a thread again that keeps being reintroduced to the public consciousness. Like a sore tooth, that trauma is prodded every so often. A bit more kindling, a bit more fuel is added to the burning pain of that trauma. Don't forget that this nasty shit is happening. And of course, I'm not trying to suggest that you should ignore it. Not at all. But there is that trauma effect that is deliberately manipulated by the system via their propagandists to keep that trauma effect alive, so that people feel that learned helplessness of not being able to solve the problem of the suffering of those people caught in human trafficking, the children being abused, etc. So it's a never-ending trauma effect. Again, that dragged out over time. Don't worry, we're going to prosecute Ghislaine Maxwell soon, and all that terrible network of people will be exposed and arrested, and then it will all become historical, and you forget about it again and go back to your lovely life of not being allowed to go outside and enjoy the sunshine. Yeah, the troll. And I thought about putting in the subtitle this week, the troll that broke the internet, or something along those lines, because that particular story and the coverage of it, and the one video in particular of the mum talking about discovering this button and showing it on the doll and demonstrating what it was all about, you know, and why there should be concerns about it. That video rapidly went viral, and a lot of people got up in arms about it. And the company's Hasbro, I think, the manufacturer that makes it, rapidly took it off the shelves and recalled it and put out an apology, you know, and sort of merely made lawyer speak of, oh, it was meant to be a sit-down sensor, so that when the doll was in a seated position, it would still make random noises. But it still leaves many questions open of, why is that button not included on the details on the packaging? Why is the sounds that are created from that particular button so sexually orientated? And I'm sorry, but you have to be a real nasty lawyer to attempt to claim that they're not sexually orientated. They are obviously gasps of pleasure and things such as that. You know, they're not just random noises. And again, just logical questioning of, well, you could have created that sensor in some other manner such that it wasn't a button that has to be depressed, that the child could discover in such a position on the doll itself. So the position of the button itself is absolutely meant to have subliminal or subtle implications to a child's mind that has no concept of the sexual connections to that part of its body. That's grooming. That's paedophilic grooming. So yeah, a lot of people on the internet started shouting about that, and it's caused a bit of a ripple. It almost broke the internet as the fact checkers came out of the woodwork to speak lies and to try and propagate the system that they are part of, to act as gatekeepers, and tried to dismiss the claims and accusations, the suggestions, the implications, maybe the speculations you could call it, that button was deliberately placed purposefully, and the sounds to go along with it purposefully. There's no way that was just some innocent mistake of an innocent designer thinking, oh, the children will love this. This will be so lovely for them. No. And I think, sorry, I haven't mentioned the chat at all yet, but I'm sure I did see scrolling past while I was rambling. Somebody did mention, yeah, Tazzy. Hiya, Taz. Really Graceful did a video about the doll in question. If you want to know a bit more, go and check out her video. I think she put it up yesterday. It was either yesterday or Saturday, but yeah, it'll be on her channel, Really Graceful's channel. And Jeff C has also covered this quite in depth. I haven't had the chance to watch his longer video that he did about it yet, but he's done a couple of shorter videos that covered it, so I picked up a bit from there as well. But this is why, as I say, it made me consider putting the subtitle this week as The Troll That Broke the Internet. Because when it comes to influencing the public mind and their perception of what is going on in the world and how the world works, what is reality, etc., all those questions, this was a really good firebrand in the darkness. Because it's very, I would say it is not possible, but I know the mealy-mouthed lawyers speak bullshit, like the fact checkers, etc., will come out of the woodwork and try and defend the darkness that they're perpetrating. But I find it impossible to make any claim that that doll was created out of an innocent desire to entertain or educate the children. No, that was very malicious, deliberately done. And the fact that it's been done by such a large manufacturer, a toy manufacturer, that is a major influence globally on children by the things that it produces and puts out there, because they don't just make toys, they make games, they make animations, or they fund, cartoon shows and stuff like that, and they have done for a long time. So they are a company, a corporation that has a major influence on young children in particular. Most of their toys are aimed at the younger age market. There's no way you can claim that that was an innocent mistake, which means it made a really good example to the general populace of, like, look, I know you might question when you meet somebody and they go, oh, have you seen all the penises in the Disney movies? And your normie brain kicks in and you're like, oh, he's one of them crazy people. He thinks he's seen penises everywhere in Disney movies. Disney loves the kids. Disney's all for the kids. It can't be true. That's just crazy conspiracy shit. They can point at things in an image and claim that it looks a bit like genitalia, but no, I can't really believe that. Yeah. And of course, you get the usual effect of that cognitive bias, an entrenchment of thought process, an appeal to external authority, etc., means they're not even willing to actually properly investigate what you're suggesting to them. So they'll just dismiss it and return to their dogma of believing that you just see things that are not really there. But that doll, you're going to find that hard to deny that in the same kind of fashion. there was very, very little ambiguity about what was going on there. So it hit the public internet biosphere, the social media sphere, quite hard. And the system had to do major damage control rapidly because of it. And I just thought that makes a really good demonstration of how, even though, as we're often talking about, and I've ranted about for years on this channel, the system has a very great monopoly on the general media environment. A very large monopoly. Maybe the word monopoly is not quite accurate because they don't truly have total dominance of the environment, but they certainly dominate the environment. They are the saturation, they are the 99% of what fills the media sphere that the majority of the public tune into one way or another. But that single event based on an obvious truth or truths, plural, about that event, i.e. the difficulty in claiming that it was innocent and the ambiguities that could be claimed around it, etc., and how it just blatantly was what it was, can make such an impact. And yeah, in the near future, they're going to continue with the damage control and try and deflect from the story and label a lot of people who question things like myself as just some crazy conspiracy theories that sees penises in Disney movies. Yeah, they will do that because that's their modus operandi. You know, there's a wealth of historical evidence to show that that's what they'll do. They'll just keep kicking the can down the road in the hope that the public gets distracted by the next big thing, and then they'll forget about that event that happened whenever that demonstrated quite clearly to them, such that their cognitive dissonance started ringing like a bell in their head, but they just couldn't deal with it, so they stuffed their fingers in their ears, carried on walking. So there's been those events in the last week, but the main thing that's just stuck with me, because it's certainly very relevant to a lot of what's happening in the UK here at the moment, because that ringing bell of dissonance is still tolling across the entire country, and for a good portion of the public, they're still deafened by it. They're still lost in the confusion of, wow, I can't believe they couldn't do that. No, I don't want to hear it. I just want to watch me TV shows, or I just want to do whatever I do to distract myself. I don't want to know about that. It doesn't, I don't want to see the sense in what I'm viewing, what I'm observing. No, I just want to try and deny it and turn it into another fantasy. And that's this is mainly from the USA, where this did the rounds through all the corporate news media, the great mask debate. And if you say it quick enough, mask debate, masturbate, and quite a few people sort of made that point across the YouTubes, uploaded videos where they got all those clips linked together. Like they do, they demonstrate how the corporate news media, certainly in the USA, just gets given a talking point, a sheet of paper with a text on it, and they just all read it out the same. So you can be watching in two different parts of the country and you hear exactly the same script read by two different news companies that are supposedly independent of each other. But you get that mask debate raging across the social sphere again, the social media sphere, but also out in the public now. Now it's starting to hit that stage, which I know we've talked about recently, where they're actively trying to set people against each other physically, because they have so terrified a portion of the populace that demographic of people are willing to get physical, because they feel that it is a physical threat to themselves if they encounter somebody who isn't wearing a mask or isn't socially distancing or whatever particular rule they're fixated on. They are starting to get literally physical with each other. And I'm not trying to defend people who are anti-mask or not wearing a mask for whatever choice. If they're resorting to physicality as well, then they're getting it wrong as well. Yeah, that's my opinion. Yeah, but that's what I think is the easiest way to say it. Is if it's resorting to physical violence and we are starting to attack each other because of this bullshit over whether you do or do not wear masks, then that is exactly what the system wants. And that will create a massive justification for them to bring in yet further draconian bullshit related to masks. So, this week in the subtitle, based on those things, just as a bit of a wordplay pun, mask debate too much and you will go blind. And I was thinking from the point of view of not so much your two eyes, that kind of, like I've just described, people getting into physical conflict with each other. And at some point, probably somebody will get an eye injury. At some point, somebody will lose an eye. It's usually the classic refrain when we were always playing up as kids and, climbing all over each other and doing that kind of stuff that kids do. So somebody's going to lose an eye. But I'm thinking more about the third eye of true perception or perception of truth. That third eye is being deliberately assaulted constantly. And certainly at the moment, the methodology of the system via its massive dominance of the media that most people refer to get their perception of what's going on in the world to one degree or another. Some people are more into their local news and information, but, some stretch out further, but it's all still perception of what's out there, what's outside my window, without actually just looking through your window for yourself. But that manipulation of that perception via the media is where they're constantly perfecting this ability to MK Ultra the general populace and affect their thinking. I kept one screenshot. Well, it's just a paused video. You just sort it out, get screen share going for a moment. Because based on this manipulation and trauma that they have induced in a lot of people, where they've got some people so scared to the point that they will physically attack others that they see that are not wearing a mask or whatever it is they're supposed to do. They're not standing on the spot that designates 2 meters from the spot that they're standing on, shit like that. But this is where it will gradually progress into legislation to further control and curtail your movements and interactions, and is in effect, as far as I can tell anyway, and I'm no legal expert, this is not legal advice, this is not medical advice, this is not whatever, blah blah blah, caveat and all that crap. But as far as I know, this is the equivalent of the Enabling Act now taking place in the UK. And this is just a general assessment. I'm taking this from the UK column news from today. And I know they've mentioned this before in their broadcast, but it's the fact that they put it up in a nicely simplistic presentation. And this is taken from the Guidance for Public Health Officers, which is the Department for Health and Social Care, the Public Health England. This is the operating procedures now for the public health officers in the UK. A public health officer may direct, remove, or request a constable to remove an individual to a place suitable for screening and assessment. In other words, a designated officer, because please note it says public health officer. It doesn't say a constable, a police officer, or anything like that. It says a public health officer, which means somebody with a clipboard who's been given a role by a local council. The public health officer for that council can direct a constable to have you taken away and put somewhere that's suitable for screening and assessment. What do they mean by suitable for screening and assessment? That's open to ambiguity of what do they consider suitable, what do they mean by screening and assessment, etc. But that is the equivalent of the Enabling Act, to enable them to pick people up and take them away. And just label them as, it's suspected COVID. And I thought about grabbing a clip from the movie Brazil for this point. I've referenced it so many times over the years, recommended that film so many times. But if you want to seek it out just for the interest and the context, it's the scene when the guy is taken away in the sack because his name was mixed up with somebody else that was on one of their lists of being a suspicious person. So the order was sent down through the bureaucracy, and the bureaucracy just doing what it does. Oh, we're just following orders, right? Orders from above. Sorry, it says here we've got to take you away in a sack, so we take you away in a sack. And the poor wife there in the apartment, after the officers have come in and taken the guy away, and she's given this receipt. Here's your receipt to say we've taken your husband away, but they've still been taken away. They've still been put into a process where the institutions will, deal with them in the manner that they do. In other countries, it's the equivalent of what they would call black bagging, when people would just be picked up off the street and taken away. A black bag would be put over their head, a hood over their head, so they can't see where they're being taken. So if they are ever released, they can't report where the black site prison was that they were held in. That's an extreme example, but this is the kind of legislation that begins that process. Any public health officer, which, as I say, is just somebody that in general, I am generalizing a little bit, but really this is what it comes down to. Somebody who could have done maybe a week or two of some kind of course that requires them to know certain public health codes and requirements, so that then they can be given the badge of office to say they're a public health officer, can now either directly ask, request, or remove you, or request a constable to do it. So in other words, they can get the police and tell the police to take you away. And the police are therefore subordinate to the public health officer's request. So where's the authority now coming from? There's various other questions you could get into about this, but check out the UK column news. If you haven't seen any of this stuff, they've been covering it really well the past several weeks or months now. And they've been pointing out these things that are happening, while a good portion of the public is arguing about whether masks do or do not help you in one way or the other. Are they beneficial or are they detrimental? Are we still on that point? How long ago did this thing begin? Several months at least, even for the somewhat unaware, because here in the UK, it was the beginning of January when they started filling the news up with the information about the COVID's coming. Look, the people are arriving on the 4 coaches, the 4 horseman coaches. Oh, they're coming. So they've had all that time to do things like investigate whether it'd be worth telling people to wear masks. Are masks actually effective? Are people actually making use of them correctly and not constantly fingering them and playing with them and taking them on and off and all? They've had plenty of time to do that, but yet again they haven't. And then introduced a requirement, a mandatory requirement to wear masks now, long after the infection has already run all the way up the country and back again, and been round to the other side of the bushes and had a cup of tea and slice of cake, and he's come back again. To talk about after the horse has bolted. This is like after the horse has bolted, gone down the field, met up with some other horses, ran around for a bit, and happily chewing the cud somewhere. Yeah, nothing to do with helping your health or protecting you. And then if you are willing and able to just do a little bit of research, and it's nothing majorly in depth, it's not like you're doing academic research or investigative journalist research, and it takes a bit of cursory investigation thanks to the technology of the internet, and you can access a lot of information that will show you that at the minimum, at the absolute conservative minimum, the question about masks is completely open. The literature up until recently categorically pretty much agreed Yeah, the way they like to talk about consensus science, which is a bit of an oxymoron, but that's the way they do it in the academic world. The consensus science said that there is no good evidence or argument to say that using masks will be effective against any kind of pandemic pathogen and the transmission of a pandemic pathogen. But now recently, some science is starting to come out that says, well, actually, no, we should do. Yeah, we need to recheck these investigations and blah, blah, blah. And that's that fact checker bullshit pressure. The propaganda is trying to saturate the environment with confusion. Whereas historically, there's plenty of evidence that show that, no. If anything, the long term use of masks, and I mean long term as in wearing them for several hours a day, as some places are suggesting you've got to even wear them in your own home now. When you're alone, you're supposedly going to have to wear a mask and even maybe goggles. Yeah, that is going to be highly detrimental to the people doing that. And as I say, this is just based on conservative approach to their arguments and evidence. If you're willing to, push the probabilities a bit further beyond that kind of conservative perspective or principle, then what they're suggesting is absolutely ridiculous. It's inverted, it's asinine, it's going to do completely the opposite to what they claim they want and why they're doing it in the first place. Masks are going to potentially make more people more ill. They're going to cause people to get ill more than they would have done if they hadn't worn the mask. As the numbers of testing keeps going up and up and up, the more the infection rate is dropping and dropping and dropping, because it shows that the more they're testing, the more they're finding out that people are either already had it and moved on, or they've currently got it and it's not really having any effect on them. The mild effects, a bit like a cold or whatever. It's already done. It's already done and over with, if there even was anything to the alleged virus and illness and etc. It's already done. So this introduction of masks is nothing to do with protecting the public's health. And it's nothing even remotely logical in its approach. It is not at all even remotely logical in its approach. It is back to front in so many different ways. So, yeah, as I said, it made me think from the point of view of the more people are getting drawn into that argument about whether the masks do or don't work, they're getting stuck in a quagmire where they are appealing to an external authority, because I think there's more than enough evidence already been available and has been for many decades now, and we can access quite readily thanks to the internet, that can quickly demonstrate for most people that, there's probably no point to it. It's certainly not going to make all difference. And if anything, if I'm forced to wear it too much, it's going to be bad for me. So, okay, move on. What's the next thing they're talking about? But they want you to keep arguing about whether the guy in front of you in the queue at the shop hasn't got his mask on correctly, or whether you even agree that the shop should be allowed to say that you can't come in unless you're wearing a mask. Then we're getting into a whole nother area of the law or legality where a business trader can have their own practice or requirements for their trade that say only certain people can come into their shop. That's up to them as a private trader. So if a shop decides to say, well, we're only going to let people in that are wearing a bin bag on their head, then if you want to shop there, you got to wear a bin bag on your head. And legally, the shopkeeper's entitled to do that. It's their shop. That really brings into question so much to do with the way the infrastructure of society operates and how we interact with each other and stuff like that. But the mealy-mouthed lawyer speak technocrats will drag it into those kind of semantic arguments, and it will go round and round, and the can will keep getting kicked down the road, and people will still be arguing about whether or not it is good or bad to wear a mask. If you think it's good to wear a mask, and you think you are under such a level of threat that it would be that the benefits would outweigh the cons of, or the detriments of wearing a mask, then if you choose to, you wear one. But don't dictate to me that I have to also wear one, because if your mask works, then you've got nothing to worry about from me, because my illness won't get through your mask. You know, if you're really that worried, stay 2 meters away from me. If you're really, really that worried, stay in your cubicle at home and never come out, because the world is full of things like germs. Yeah, leave the germ theory aside for a minute. Could say bacteria, that'll work better. Remove that sort of level of ambiguity or questionable connection. You know, say bacteria. The world's full of bacteria. So at some point in a day, you encounter a probable threat from so many different directions, but you still go out every day and do what you do. The likelihood, and I've heard a few people mention this recently in their uploads. I think I might have mentioned it weeks ago. It was not long after the CDC put out their info about how the mortality rate has now been reduced to something like 0.26%. And I made comments about, in some of the details of what they were saying, they were basically saying that children have an almost 0% chance of suffering from this illness if they catch it, if they even do catch it, the alleged virus. And I suggested, I posited that, well, that means then a child is at more risk of being struck and killed by lightning than they are of being at risk of catching this thing and suffering any detriment from it. But do you keep all your kids locked away in a cupboard because lightning? No, you don't. Yeah, when you look at the probabilities of accident and death as a statistic over years, and based on countries and different demographics and whatever, you can keep looking at this kind of stuff to your heart's content, because there's plenty of statistics out there for this kind of stuff if you're interested in it. You look at the probabilities of causes of accidents and death. You're an immensely greater probability of suffering from something else, like tripping over a flagstone in the street and cracking your head open on the floor and ended up in a coma in a hospital for 6 months and suffering lifelong detrimental effects from it. You're at higher probability of that shit happening than you are of suffering in any way from this alleged illness. We've mentioned recently the fact that the media has been switched over the last few weeks into reporting on case numbers rather than death count. And this was deliberate because they knew they couldn't keep perpetuating the manipulation of the death numbers. A few weeks ago, it came out that they had to admit, the UK government had to admit that some of the death count numbers were wrong, because a statistician, I think from Oxford, had pointed out that people were still on that list even though they died of other causes. So the government have now recently, I think it was last week, maybe a little bit longer, 10 days ago or whatever, put out a public announcement saying, oh, well, yeah, we're sorry, but 10% of the numbers were wrong, so we'll change it by 10%. Remember what I was saying earlier about that kind of damage control to do with the troll story? Oh, no, it's just this little bit we got wrong. It was just an honest mistake. We didn't really mean to put a button on its genital. Oh, no, we didn't really mean to include that 10%, but it was only 10% honest. You don't need to look any further into the numbers. Now, just accept that we're, mea culpa. It was only 10%. We're sorry we got that mistake wrong, Fuck all you people that couldn't go to your relative's funeral because they were one of that 10% that we put under COVID, which means you were blocked from attending their funeral. Fuck you guys. No, it was just a simple mistake. 10% of how many thousands in the UK? It's only a few thousand, certainly not a lot compared to the annual flu deaths that have been going on for time immemorial. Yet we don't shut the world down for those flu deaths. We don't force people to wear a face covering. Yeah, that's a face covering. We don't force people to wear a face covering because of flu each year, seasonal flu or whatever. Yeah, I've made these kind of arguments many times, but to bring it back to that point of the sticking in the quagmire of the, I want to call them carnivorous memes, because they are memes that attack people's ability to think. And think in the sense of thinking is a linear process most of the time. The majority of the thinking that we do is a linear process. This is why, sorry fly, go away. This is why for most of us, it can be readily said that we're stuck in left brain thinking, egoic thinking, because that's how that part of the brain processes work. You create a linear plan. You take step one, then step two, then step three, then you get to your destination. That's the progress that we work on. That's the way most of our thinking goes, because that's what we need to do in our daily lives. You prepare to do something, you do it, and then you get the conclusion or the reward by doing that process. But for a lot of people, you can throw in these memes, these cognitive viruses that cause people's thinking to just keep tripping over at the same point. They can't quite get that last connection of conclusion. It's like there's a chasm been opened up between the linear thinking process and the destination of the conclusion. So instead of making the whole journey successfully, they get so far and they go, oh, no, something must be wrong, run it again. Oh, no, something must be wrong, run it again. Oh, no, something must be wrong, run it again. And they get stuck in these cognitive loops. And that's cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a loop, it's certainly circular in its effect, because people keep running through the same process in their minds like a linear, generalized linear thought process. But when they're just about to get to the conclusion, there's that little mistake or tweak that so offends their biases or their perceptions of reality, their normalcy bias, whatever it is, that makes them flip back on themselves. They go, oh no, it can't be that, so therefore I must be getting something wrong, so I've got to do the process again. And they keep butting into that, no, it is what you think it is, you just have difficulty accepting it. The troll figure. It is what you think it is. That company deliberately put a button on a doll where its genitals would be, and when you press the button, it makes sexy noises. It is what you think it is. But the cognitive dissonance says, oh, they can't do that, because the system, the indoctrination through most of our upbringings in the standard school education system in most countries, it is impressed upon you that the external authorities care about you and only do things for your benefit. They are like your pseudo surrogate parents. So therefore, you could never question or consider that they're doing something that is detrimental to you. This then, by extrapolation, gets applied to any so-called experts, whether they're working in a government or working in a corporate, in private sector environment. So when a spokesman for that toy company comes forward and says, oh no, it was just an innocent mistake, we didn't realize people would perceive it that way, the cognitive dissonance bias goes, oh right, yeah, okay, of course they would never have done it deliberately. And we're getting the same thing now with the masks. This is a classic example of the cognitive dissonance. There are so many logical inconsistencies with the government's claims about why you need to now start wearing masks in certain places, and the reality that for most people they're considering that don't make sense. I can go into this shop here and I've got to wear a mask, but then in the side of the shop there's a little cafe area where if I sit down and have something to eat, I can take the mask off. So I'm still in the same airspace, but by the difference of me sitting down to eat and drink, suddenly I'm safe from the infection. Doesn't make any sense. I'm told that this thing can transmit through the air up to 20 plus feet in a cough and a sneeze or a fart, and I can still smell the fart even when I've got the face mask covering on, the face covering on. So if I can still smell the fart, doesn't that mean that any virus in the fart is also getting through the mask as well? Logical inconsistencies, multiple. You know, why is it introduced now, so long after the fact? Blah blah blah. I've said most of these so many times. But they hit that wall of indoctrination of, oh, the government's doing it for your own health, it's doing it for your own good. And there may be little mistakes made here and there, like the 10%, it was only 10%. So, but you know, but don't worry about that. They're just little mistakes. So, you know, just incompetence. Don't worry about it. Consider as well at the moment that, you know, a good chunk of the Lebanon government is resigning because of their incompetence of allowing that situation to occur, if you accept the current official narrative that it was an accident because there's stuff stored there that went bang. In the same manner, cognitive dissonance. So this is just incompetence, that Bojo is such a buffoon that he didn't think to mandate the masks until now. Oh, well, you know, we can forgive him because he's such an entertaining buffoon. You know, we'll just have a laugh at his silliness instead. Cognitive dissonance. They keep doing a little loop, a little flip back on themselves and trying to run the same process of, this don't make sense, that don't make sense, that don't make sense, but the government can't be doing it because they want to actually cause me harm. No, I don't. Oh no, I've got to go back and start again. Carnivorous memes of cognitive pollution that are given to us by the system and reinforced in various ways throughout our lives if they get away with it, you know. And of course, there's the choice involved in this of, you can always just turn it off. You can stop tuning into it, and then, you know, it's highly unlikely to have an effect on you until you encounter somebody that is stuck with that mind virus, and then they might pass it on to you. Maybe you need a mask for your brain. That's, oh man, I've got to patent that brain mask to work against the mind virus. That's what we need next. I'm going to petition Bojo that he has to mandate that everyone from now on has to have a brain mask. It's the only thing that'll work against this virus. Yes, I am being very facetious, as they say. Oh, thanks for putting that up, Gary. I was just about to look for that as well, because I'd opened it up on my browser so I could share it. No, I don't need to share it, do I? I just need to click on your share screen. Yeah, this is the new hand sanitizer for the cognitively dissonant that have too much uncomfort or discomfort, I should say, use proper English words, too much discomfort from their dissonance, such that they want to silence that ringing bell in their head. So they'd rather just wash their hands and walk away. But the system very much wants us to fight over whether you do or don't wear a mask. And don't forget, if you're fat, they're coming for you next. Now they've mandated that it's all your fault because you put too much pressure on the NHS and they can't cope because they're too busy making their TikTok dancing videos. They ain't got time to deal with you fatties. So you fatties now are going to be put on that shielded list, which basically means you're on the house arrest list. You need to stay at home and self-isolate because you're too big to be allowed in society. Beginnings of eugenics implementation. At what point are they going to say you're too ginger? Oh, ginger is a symptom of the virus. Yeah, you've got a bit of gingerism in you. You've got that ginger virus going on, haven't you? So you're not allowed out. You've got to stay home. You've got to self-isolate because otherwise you might spread your gingerism all over the place. And for myself, when I was listening to some of that crap that they've been coming out with, I was thinking, I'm doing all right for myself because I've got COPD. That's one of the risk points. I'm male. I'm over 45. I'm over 6 foot tall. Maybe the only thing I'm not including, I am trans black. So I suppose that sort of counts as a BAME, BAME. I'm trans black, so, so I'm a high risk factor. But I've been doing what I do. Yeah, I'm not exactly a socialite anymore like I used to be in my youth. I'm not going out pubbing and clubbing and doing all that kind of stuff anymore, but I'm going out and doing whatever, yeah. And yet I'm supposedly one of the really high risk categories. Again, if you actually look at the statistics, and even allowing for the fact that you're looking at, or you're seeing a lot of the statistics that are being presented by the system itself, so via the ONS, the Office of National Statistics, and the Johns Hopkins and all that kind of shit. So yes, you have to take all their numbers with a very big pinch of salt. But even looking at their own official numbers, it is primarily the elderly and the very elderly, the 70s, 80s, 90 plus age bracket, that are the only ones that are at any really severe risk, such that they should be well protected. They should be looked after in a way that minimizes their exposure and stuff like that. Yeah. But then more and more, the evidence has now been building up, and I know we've been talking about this potentiality for quite a while. More and more evidence now is building up, and more people are starting to actually speak out that the reality of those deaths in that elderly demographic are turning out to be nothing to do with the virus, the alleged virus, and are more to do with what here in the UK was referred to as the care pathway. There was a Liverpool care pathway in particular that was in the news media for quite a while. That is quite simply a process of euthanasia via starvation, dehydration, and drug overdose. And this is seemingly, I don't want to speak in an absolute because I can't confirm this for myself directly, but it certainly seems to be becoming a standard in the British health system, in the NHS. That if you slot into certain requirements, which similar to like I've just read out or stated for myself, comorbidity, which is COPD, over 45, which seems to be an age bracket demographic that a lot of them are settling on. It used to be the over 50s, but they seem to be slowly reducing it. And all the other stuff, male and blah, blah, blah. If you fit certain demographics, then pretty much guaranteed, if you go into hospital, you will automatically be put on a DNR list, which is a do not resuscitate or do not resuscitate order. In some places the acronym is slightly different, but the principle is the same. You will be put on a care pathway. And this is what is highly likely to have happened to a lot of those elderly people that make up the bulk of the numbers of the death count that they have been touting for the last however many months. And they systematically herded the elderly into care homes where this could be done to them. And I'm not throwing aspersions or accusations at the people who work in the care homes. The culpability and whatever will come out as things progress, but the situation was created by the government, by the system, by those that are enacting these agendas while lying to the public's face. It's gaslighting on a global level. I'm not hurting you, stab, 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 stab. They systematically herded the elderly away from hospitals and into care homes where they could have this care pathway process enacted on them, and they have been basically euthanized. And I understand the gravity of what I'm saying and what I've been suggesting for the past few months, that this looks like where it was going. But there are people now actually starting to come forward and share their experiences and their observations of being in that kind of environment. But I don't think it's sensible or potentially healthy, yeah, individually or for the body of the whole, of the organism as a whole. It's not going to be a good idea to have any expectation, or don't be naive into thinking that because some of this information is starting to trickle out, that all of a sudden all those bad people are going to get arrested and Trump will capture all the nasty paedophiles and he'll save the world again, just like Super Trump does. That's the naivety game of the external authority, that they want you to believe in, that they will fix it and you'll be safe and you can just not have to worry about it and just carry on spending your money and doing your thing. This is something that is a global effect. The situation has generated an immense amount of debt globally. That's all got to be paid to someone. You know, debt is always owed to someone. So that money has to eventually land in somebody's private pockets. And the sheer amount and number of people that have either been put out of work or made destitute or had some major life-changing crap happen to them because of this situation. And then there's the ongoing into the future, the next generations that are going to have to live with this and try and adopt this new abnormal bullshit. And the great reset switchover into the new paradigm, the new world paradigm, new world order. They're not going to step away from the lie. I've described it before as they, like in a poker game, they're all in. They are betting their lives basically on this situation. Because if some of the worst possibilities start happening, then you're talking a global tyrannical dictatorship that has never been seen before in the history that we know of. So there's no way they're going to back away from the lie. They can't. They have basically committed a mortal lie because their lives and livelihoods are going to be based on people accepting that lie. So big shout out to Big T, to Tony for doing these images. He did the one that I've been using as the intro screen recently. I can't quite fit it all in when I'm setting up the shows, so it's missing a little bit, but he did this one as well, which I wanted to show. Where's your mask, you Nazi? Yeah, and this is a common methodology that the system repeatedly uses because unfortunately it works on most people, because most people's cognitive ability is stuck in a little box that was given to them by the system itself. So they rattle around inside that box and bounce off the walls of dissonance constantly. But they will label anyone that questions or speaks out or has a counter-narrative point of view to what they're suggesting as being the enemy, as being the pariah, as being the threat to the society that people should be afraid of. And the main point I was trying to raise tonight was that question of allowing them to manipulate us into fighting each other over a face covering, when that is what they love to do. That's their favorite method of getting us to adopt some kind of symbol, because that, in a symbolic language, is what it is. It's a symbol that represents that you have chosen to adhere to a certain ideology or perception of life, and via that symbol there will be a counter argument and the two camps will fight each other. And they've been filling the media with little news snippets about this kind of thing, where, you know, somebody throws hot coffee on the guy because he's not wearing a mask, and the woman spraying pepper spray in somebody's face because they're at a picnic table not wearing a mask, out in the open air not wearing a mask. How dare they? Across the world throughout history, there's always been people that will jump to extremes. Maybe you're wearing the wrong coloured hat when you walk down that road and somebody starts having a go at you because you're wearing a hat that's the wrong colour. Yeah, there's always been people that jump to those kind of extremes. That doesn't mean that's what everybody does. You know, the old cheesy cliche that your grandparents probably said to you, you know, oh, somebody told you to jump off a cliff. If they said everyone was jumping off cliffs, would you jump off a cliff as well? It's the same thing with the masks. The government doesn't need to mandate, doesn't need to make any legal or lawful requirement at all. They just pressure the private sector initiates it, and then everybody thinks it's some kind of trend that to be part of the herd you have to join in with, otherwise you will be ostracized and you'll be out the tribe and you'll be all on your own outside the village, blah, 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 blah. So they go along to get along. And at some point, I feel, I'll talk from my own point of view, I don't want to project onto anyone else or tell you what you should or shouldn't be doing. I know I talk that way a lot because that's me projecting my own point of view, but at some point you're going to have to decide whether perpetuating and enabling somebody else's fear is your responsibility and culpability. I'm not the one that made a large portion of the UK population so terrified that if they see me and I'm not wearing a mask, they think I'm a mortal threat to their existence. I didn't do that to them. I didn't go around everybody's house in the UK kicking their door going, oh, I'm so fucking dangerous. If you see me and I'm not wearing a mask, you got to be terrified of me. I didn't do that. The government did that. The governmental propaganda did that. The BBC, the governmental propaganda arm in the media, did that. And now they're trying to shift the blame onto me. And they're trying to persuade me that if I go out in public and somebody sees me and they're afraid, that it's my fault. It's my fault that they're afraid. No, it's not. That's logically incorrect. And it is morally abusive. It is emotionally abusive to try and put that guilt and blame on me. That's gaslighting again. The system likes to do that kind of shit, yeah? And it's reinforcing a trauma-based effect. But I'm not the one that made those other people afraid. And if anything, and I'll refer again classically to the Bruce, as Bruce Lee put it, courage does not exist in the absence of fear. It is the ability to operate in the presence of fear. If those people are afraid, it is more beneficial for them to see others who are not afraid, and not afraid through sheer obstinance and ignorance, and they're just, oh, I don't care, I'm not wearing it anyway, I don't need to know any of the science or information. No, I choose to do what I'm doing because I've looked at some of the information, some of the science, some of the evidence, some of the arguments, etc. I've listened to a whole lot of stuff from various experts on both sides of the argument. And I choose to say, no, thank you, I'm not wearing a fucking mask. Because of a lot of the things I've talked about recently. It is a steady, gradual process of introducing a dictatorial system of control, a technocratic dystopia. So no, I'm not going to help that happen. And if by me not wearing a mask, somebody who is dealing with that fear virus that was given to them by the system's propaganda, somebody who's trying to break out of their own cognitive shell, their own dissonant shell that has been put on them by the system, the more they see other people just going about their day, living their life as if there is no terror, there is no phantom invisible enemy that you have to be afraid of. Do you remember only a few years ago, there was that film, Hollywood film, that was a bit of a trend when it came out where, and I can't remember the name, a stupid name, whatever, something box, canary box or something like that, where the heroine, yeah, they don't use that word anymore, do they?
It was a birdcage.
Birdcage, where she has to be blindfolded.
Yes, blindfolded and ends up in a blind home at the end or whatever, yeah.
Because if she sees the monster, then the monster can get her. Whereas if she's blindfolded and can't see the monster can't get her. Was that the premise? Because I've never actually seen
that
it.
was it. If you saw it, then it would infect you, and then they ended up in a blind institution, where they just couldn't see anyway. So all these people survived who were blind.
The mask debate. If you mask debate too much, it will make you go blind. And I was thinking about it over the weekend. I was thinking that film was probably another foreshadowing film, another pre-programming film, where it's putting this idea into people's heads of the invisible enemy that can only get you once you see it. So you have to walk around with your eyes closed. You have to shut out the world of your reality. We learn through visual observation, things like that. So there's that element of the threat of the invisible enemy that will get you as soon as you see it. There's a little sort of statement, phrase that's been doing the round the past several weeks of this virus is supposedly so deadly that you have to wait until you get tested before you find out if you've got it or not. If it was deadly, you'd fucking know about it without needing to be tested. But no, this thing's so deadly that you have to get tested before you know you have it. In other words, the monster doesn't exist until you see it, and once you see it, then it gets you. So all those people with those masks living in that fear bubble that the system has given to them have seen the monster that the system has created as a phantom to terrify them. So, of course, they're scared of it because they see it, because it's a mental image that's been given to them by the system. Can you physically see the virus? No. Can you look in a microscope and see the virus? No. Can you go anywhere? All these academic groups, the different laboratories or whatever, and say, can you show me a picture, an electron microscope image of the virus? No, they can't, because they haven't actually been able to do that for some weird reason. Well, they got pictures of other shit, but they can't show you a picture of this virus.
And the testing, obviously, we've talked about the testing and how inaccurate it is. And it's not even testing for COVID-19. It just tells you antibodies and previous bouts of coronaviruses you've had over your lifetime. If you've had any, it will show up. That's it.
So that was my main point for tonight to try and get across, was this concept that the mask can be a symbolic representation of a meme of fear that people have become, I don't want to say infected, but have become obsessed with. Because it requires the obsession to keep it alive. Once you stop obsessing on it and you forget about it and you just go about your day, it evaporates. And that's not out of ignorance. That's out of the actual reality that when you go about your day and you interact with people, maybe you shake a hand, maybe you give someone a hug, and lo and behold, you didn't die. So reality is demonstrating to you that the phantom that you thought was real, that you obsessed on, that only existed because you obsessed on it, has suddenly poof, gone, evaporated.
But I think people have mentioned this before, and you mentioned the public health officers. There will be some kind of COVID police force or something like that set up to do what you showed there, to assess people. Compliance and things like that. That will sort of expand from the public health officers, if you like. They'll have more power.
Some of the ones I've seen so far have been corporate employees. They've been, so for example, in a supermarket, they're one of the supermarket security staff who's given like an extra job role where they are now the compliance officer for the store. So they have a special jacket and they go around making sure everybody's following the rules and shit.
COVID officer or something. Yeah, that's all. It's all coming.
That's why it struck me so much about what the UK column was showing. Because in the wording of that document, it doesn't say a police constable or a judge or a solicitor or anything that is part of the judicial system. It just said a public health officer.
Yeah.
That can be near to fucking anyone. Almost literally, that can be anyone. So what are they saying here? All of a sudden, they are franchising out the power to take you off the street and out of society to almost anyone. It reminded me of what they did when they shifted the assessments for people with illnesses and disabilities, etc., to groups like Atos. They privatized it.
Yeah. Well, let's there's the half that are in fear. There's another half that ain't in fear, and those who, like you said, go along to get along. Well, they're like in a prison. They're keeping themselves locked in their own mental. They're not moving out and standing in your own power with no fear. Well, that's your freedom. That's you. That's who you are. You're not meant to live like this. We're not meant to be like this. We can see all the nonsensical crap around it all. It doesn't make any sense. And as we know with the mask wearing as well, as you mentioned last week, Cookie, it's only through political lobbying that we're wearing the fucking things, not because they work. That's the only reason we're wearing them, because politicians want you to.
They wanted a physical reminder, a visual reminder of that invisible enemy. Remember what I said about that movie?
Yeah.
If you can't see the enemy, it can't harm you. You look in, you don't see it, it can't harm you because it doesn't fucking exist.
Yeah.
Hi, Dino, you right?
Yeah, mate. I didn't realise Gary had gone.
I know.
Orwell and Mione are reading a news report.
Often he has to drop out at about 9ish because if they shut the internet cafe dead on the dot, he has to be out. So that's why I try to finish me ranting before I get to the hour so that he gets a chance to say something. But unfortunately, this week I didn't.
You're on a roll, Cookie. You're on a roll. Good stuff you said there anyway. And thumbs up, guys, in the chat and that, because, it's good information. People should share it and, listen, because it's, all that, it's all there. People just need to start thinking. And that thing with the troll dolls was quite shocking. I saw that the other day. And it reminded me, it takes you into the Disney stuff and, in the past. And Pinocchio is interesting. That Pockets of the Future put a good one up about the Pinocchio movie coming out with Tom Hanks. Hey, Tom Hanks again.
Another one. I didn't know.
Yeah, they're making some kind of, or he's been suggested as playing the lead role of the old man who in the little book, because it's a very dark, creepy story. Pinocchio. It's probably one of the darkest Disney movies out there. So go and have a look at Pockets' little upload there. It goes into quite a bit of the background and what people have been saying for years about this stuff and how dark and Disney is, and just leads on to now you've got these sorts of toys which have been out for a while. There's other things I've seen in the past that are just as horrendous, just to sexualize children at a very early age without the parents even realizing that's what's going on. So it's quite an insidious plot here by the likes of Hasbro and their chief CEOs, and that'd be interesting to look into them, what connections they have to the darker cabal. Because they're putting these toys out there willy-nilly and thinking, no one's going to spot it. I mean, come on, it's...
What's the people that's making them said, though, you know what I mean? It's like, they're not fixing their head, but what am I doing here? This is wrong. Why am I making this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
If you listen to Really Graceful or watch Really Graceful's video, she brings up that point. If you bother to spend a bit of time thinking about it, we're talking about a large multinational, international corporation that's been making toys for children for however many decades. You're telling me that they don't have a massive long chain of checkers and designers and corporate meetings and board meetings and design meetings? How many times would the possibility have arisen for somebody to put their hand up saying, excuse me, I think this might be a bit weird? But nobody did.
Well, Trump's even thanked him. He's had big praise off Trump, the CEO. I can't remember his name now, but apparently they pulled out of China. So they come to the US. They weren't manufacturing in China. He was one of those companies that decided to, manufacture in the US. So given a nice, glowing profile then, and then they produced toys like this. It's like, wow.
It's being destroyed, China, isn't it? It's getting it from all angles at the minute.
Well, I do
They've
think
been underwater for months. They've been surrounded by troops for months. I mean, from the beginning of the year, this has been going on. Indians confronting with Indians. Then we had Taiwan and US with USS Nimitz, biggest warship in the world. That's been there for 2.5 months now, with full fleet. That carries a fleet of, I think it's eight.
Yeah,
ships.
8 ships.
So there's 20,000 troops, American troops there anyway.
And so it's still the bases on Okinawa and other islands. There's that. Oh man, I can't remember the name of it. I know it's got like a Spanish name. That came up as a possibility for where they might have disappeared that plane. The MH, was it 3?
Oh yeah.
There's that one air base smack in the middle of the China Sea.
Yes.
What's
Like
it called?
Something Madeira, something. I know it's like a Spanish or something. I can't remember. See, so many bits of news and information like that over the last few years, and now they are heavily pushing the blame China for everything. Justification. I'm not trying to suggest that China are innocent, not at all. I've been talking for many years about how China is the model of the way they want the entire globe to be. The society that they currently have in China is what they want to roll out across the entire world.
Yeah.
So I don't think, they're good, the government there is good or their way is better or any of that shit, not at all. But they also repeatedly use that Hegelian method of, well, we need an enemy so that then the people will agree to allow us to attack the enemy because we can show the people, look, they're bad guys. And as Trump likes to keep doing, it's China. Put all the blame on them, and they've been systematically fueling the narrative that China messed with the virus to engineer it and all this kind of shit, but it accidentally escaped. To make it seem like China is the one to blame for all the deaths, all the debt, all the loss of the economy that is currently happening in America. So at some point, I'm very much expecting Trump or one of the other Western allies to turn around and start pushing towards conflict with China. They already are, but I mean, it's going to get more overt. Yeah.
I know it was EU here, wasn't it, that wrecked everything, not China. EU paid them all to move to China.
And,
I know.
And we invited them over here to do loads of shit for us, like building nuclear power stations,
5G,
teaching us how to build a firewall like the Chinese firewall, so that they could, when you start having your infodemic effect and you naughty people are talking too much about these questions, oh no, we can just blank you out, we can shut you down, we can shadow ban you, we can disappear you in the algorithms.
Yeah.
Chinese firewall. You want to know what's happening currently in Syria? Well, good luck in accessing information. You can get some information, but if they choose to, they can shut that down. They can isolate us into local areas of internet coverage. They've proved that before in the past. We were sort of talking about this a bit before I clicked the go live button. And at the moment, we've got physical localized lockdowns in some places, like over in Australia in Melbourne. That is full on martial law dictatorship lockdown as far as I'm concerned, when they start doing what they've been doing over there. But here in the UK, it's still this rolling localized lockdown. If they claim there's a little spike somewhere, they can initiate a lockdown in that area at some point. And this, again, the guys at the UK column sort of covered this a little bit, the suggestion that at some point the public are going to get a bit uppity and there's going to be more social unrest. The number of people going to anti-mask protests is going to grow. The number of protests is going to grow. So at some point in that infodemic effect, they could potentially initiate localized internet blackouts. Include your phone coverage, your network service, and they can do this quite readily. The technology certainly allows them to do this. So if
Russians.
they decide, if there's a massive protest in London, similar to what happened in Berlin recently, say there's like 1 million plus people turn up in London for a protest, they can isolate the coverage in London so anyone else in the rest of the country won't know what's happening, won't know how many people are there, won't know what's being done to them, etc.
Yeah, and they'll be sending videos to their friends while they're there thinking they're getting there, and they're not, because they, like you say, they're They're not being displayed. You think they are, but they ain't. Yeah.
What do you think of the missile video of Beirut?
Yeah. Saturation, pollution, information pollution.
Yeah. Like I was saying earlier, I was having a discussion with somebody that was a missile expert, determined that it was a missile that's done it. So, show it me. Show me the missile.
Yeah, I'd mentioned before that explosion. Yeah, we didn't on Wednesday or Thursday or Tuesday. It happened, I think, and we knew, but I didn't want to mention it because I want to see what was going on. And we've had a week now, haven't we? And I think more as I see it and see how it's being played out. Since either that stuff had been there for 6 years, that ammonium nitrate, that chemical.
I've got it up here actually. That's what I was just reading about. They're all under house arrest, all the dock officials.
Yeah. And we know that, all of the sort of undercover agent, whatever goes on, they could easily get in there, know that was there, and wait for their moment to, cause a fire to cause the explosion. No missile needed, just some guys who happen to know, the area very well, and there's plenty of agents around in Lebanon, a few, so they'd know exactly what was going on, and they would have planned this maybe months ago or even years ago at some point.
It's possible. You know what it's like with this kind of thing. We could speculate forever about possibilities, and it's possible that something like an outside attack happened, like a missile, or even, as I've seen some people suggest, a directed energy weapon. Something like that. Maybe it could have been, but we don't need to go to that kind of level of
knowing
complexity of explanation to still achieve the same result. There could have been all the 2,700 tons of stuff stored there that somebody thought, all we need to do is set that off, ignite that, and boom, that'll be a big one.
That'll destroy the port, everything around it, keep the people in poverty. Everything gone.
You want to crash that country. I know I may be overstretching a little bit, I don't know about a lot of the other cities in Lebanon and stuff like that, but certainly Beirut is like the city in Lebanon. So they pretty much disabled the major city in Lebanon. You want to potentially crash a nation, that's the kind of shit you do. That's sabotage, social infrastructure sabotage. They're not going to be able to sort that situation out for many years. It's going to take multiple years to get that in any way resolved. So now they're literally teetering on the edge of they could be dragged down into chaos, and you could end up with another failed state which suits the balkanization agenda and the Greater Israel Project and all that kind of shit. And all this happening at a time when they're amping up the friction globally. I thought of putting that in the subtitle. If you're suffering from the friction of the great mask debate. If you masturbate too much, you'll get sore from all the friction.
I was just saying here, in 2013 it was actually taken off a cargo ship. 2014 letters were sent asking to either for the resale of it or to deport it. And then in 2015 there were another letter, and then in 2016 another letter.
And it still sat there.
I mean, you see that picture that them bags are in a decrepit state. Like I say, sat on a porous concrete floor. Because it wouldn't have been a sealed, watertight floor, that. Do you know, what was that dock? Was it reclaimed land?
I don't know.
It looks, if you look underneath the dock, it looks like sandbag. It looks like a reclaimed dock. I'm just trying to explain the crater, because obviously it's going to have mega flex in that, with it being sand underneath if it's a reclaimed deck. Reclaimed sand, land. That'd explain the size of that crater, really, because it'd flex under it.
Well,
If you look-
the size of that shockwave was just everyone see it. It was just wow. That's just never seen anything like that before.
If you look at the Texas one, it was very similar, but not as big. 7 mile that travelled. Broke
Yeah.
windows 7 mile away.
Yeah.
That, go on, Cookie.
Just to mention that there's a common misconception that anything that has a mushroom cloud kind of shape or has that kind of toroidal ripple shockwave is automatically a nuclear weapon. It's like, no, it just needs to be a certain size.
Yeah.
That's all. The combustion needs to be of a certain size, and then you will get that shape in the output. It's back to the electric universe stuff. It's the way the concussion. Yeah. The
Think about it. Compression wave compresses all the moisture back in the air into liquid form.
And
that's why you get the compression wave.
The toroidal energy field that's emanated from the concussion. Yeah, you get that outer ring that goes out the shock wave, but then you get the classic mushroom shape because of the expulsion upwards. So it's just something I wanted to mention because I know, like, when I was chatting with some of my relatives and we were looking at the footage, and I was saying to them, like, just because it's a mushroom shape doesn't mean it's a nuclear weapon or anything like that. It's just the sheer size of the explosion. But,
2,750 tons gonna go with one hell of a bang. It's stored next to fireworks.
Yeah, because that's what everybody initially said, wasn't it? It was from fireworks. Don't believe that. Well, that maybe enough of them. I don't know, but there wasn't enough of them. That was like I say, ammonium nitrate, or going up, causing that.
Between the two of them, whether it was ammo cooking off, or whether it was fireworks at first, because they looked similar. But then I noticed the flashes were different colours when I was slowing it down and everything. That's what put my mind towards the fireworks.
I did hear, what's his name, Alex, I think it is, on the UK column. He was claiming that people he'd spoken with, experts he'd spoken with, said it was munitions, not fireworks.
Right.
That's what come to me straight away when I seen it, because I've seen ammo cooking off before, you know what I mean?
Well, he referenced information about the Turkish storing munitions there for years, so it wasn't just the ammo nitrate, the ammonium nitrate. It was also munitions that had been covertly stored there. But it still leaves open that possibility that outside agents could have deliberately ignited it for that purpose. It's going to cause diplomatic ramifications for obviously not just Lebanon, but for other countries involved in all those connections. Like, who were the Russian groups that originally owned the ship that was carrying it? Things like that.
Well, I traced it back to a company. It's an Australian company. But so he's been trying to get it back for the last few years, but resell it. There's only one major company that makes it, and it's an Australian firm. And if you look on that picture, you can pull out, you get out serial numbers off bag and everything.
That's I know it's a bit of a stretch, but I'm just seeing that as a connection back through to the whole current global situation of potential conflict with China.
Yeah.
So I think I mentioned this last week. I might have mentioned it on Wednesday. But I was considering, like, why in Australia have they gone so rapidly over the top in the sense of how hard they're cracking down on their population and their curtailment of movement? Like, you can only go 5 kilometres, you can't cross the county borders and things like that. It's like, why have they gone so hard that far? And I think I might have mentioned this before. The one possibility is that this is to prepare for a war footing. And who is it that is likely to get hit first if a conflict begins with China? It's going to be Australia, guaranteed. Because if it's China and most likely Russia versus the West, it's the East versus West bullshit that the UN agenda has been tied to for decades. But if that does go off, then Australia, as part of the Anglo-American Western Allies alliance, is going to be against China and Russia, and geographically its positioning means they're going to hit it first, and they're going to hit it hard because the population there isn't that great, isn't that big, so therefore a blitzkrieg approach will dominate that continent, and basically China will take the continent of Australia. That would probably be one of their initial goals if a conflict kicks off. So why are they going so over the top and strict and authoritarian in Australia? Because they're getting the public prepped for what the fuck is going to happen. And please, I'm speculating, yeah? I'm not predicting the future in this sense, in this respect. I'm just speculating on possibilities based on observations, looking at what's going on. It's an interesting connection that it's an Australian company that was the original source for the fertilizer.
That's up there, Cookie. I've got it on share screen there.
Oh shit, sorry, man.
Orica.
Yeah.
That's the safety sheet for it. It's actually, even if it were a rocket, a big rocket or munitions, it's actually go off with shock.
Yeah.
It actually tells them, and it says in the safety sheet here somewhere.
That might be why some people are suggesting a directed energy weapon, because the shock impact of something like that hitting could have caused the ignition.
Harmful oxidizing agent. Oxidizing agents may cause various
vigorous reactions. That's one way to fucking call it. Yeah. Fucking explosive will be the other thing, not fucking vigorous reaction.
That solves the supplies explosives thingies for what we're doing on the ship coming off at that dock.
Yeah.
I think that's why it was confiscated, because they were trying to sneak it in, I think. It does say on it somewhere that an impact can set it off.
Wasn't it something to do with an embargo against Lebanon at the time? I seem to remember that it was Israel that was trying to put some kind of embargo on them. I might be mixing it up with something else, so I can't remember.
I'm not sure.
But anyway, yeah. It is tenuously connected into the larger global picture, I think. These kind of connections demonstrate that.
That's doing me head in it. I read this from top to bottom on it. I can't find the bugger now where it says impact can cause it explode.
Maybe
Go on, you alright?
No, I was just saying maybe that's kind of details that they don't generally put in the information, but I suppose if it's the safety notification that came along with the cargo, it must do.
There's only us that it's banned, really, that we can't buy it publicly.
Mm.
An American can buy it. It's in different types, different forms, but you can buy it over at counter. Poland, Russia. I watch some videos where they're making rocket fuel, for model rockets and all that with it. And mix it in with sugar, and you've got rocket fuel. So it's an incendiary at the end of the day, isn't it? Oxidizer.
Yeah.
Stick it with anything and stick a lid over it, and it'll just keep burning. It'll burn and burn and burn till it gets to a certain temperature, and then it explodes.
What was the one that he was allegedly using in the Oklahoma bombing? That was a fuel and fertilizer one, I think.
Yeah, that was it. It was ammonium
diesel fuel.
Yeah, and ammonium nitrate.
Yeah, which was more likely built for him by an FBI bomb maker.
Well, you look at that. I bet you there weren't even a ton in that bomb. I was there then.
No,
actually in America then.
Not even half a ton, as far as I remember.
Yeah, And look what it did to that building in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
It almost flattened it, didn't it?
Yeah.
Like, that's 5,000 times? No, 5,500 times more in that warehouse.
Yeah.
Than what were in that car.
Yeah. I can't remember the name of the documentary now. I know James Corbett has featured it a few times, so you might find it on the Corbett Report. But there's a really good documentary on the Oklahoma bombing. For anyone that's interested, it's sort of historical context. If you want to know more about fertilizer bombs and the terrorist threat that they used to tell us about fertilizer bombs, now COVID's cured terrorism. Have you noticed? There's no
Yeah.
terrorism anymore, yeah? There's no cancer, there's no heart attacks. COVID's cured fucking everything. We should all be celebrating for COVID. Yeah?
Have you noticed how they
COVID
always,
killed all the terrorists.
you know, how they always declare it a war against COVID? But sure they can bring all these emergency rules in there, declare it a war.
Yeah. In some places now, I know they've sort of done similar recently anyway. Like last year, there was the states of emergency because of terrorist threats and things like that. But now, recently, there's a lot more places been declaring a state of disaster. I know there's some in the USA where they said they're now declaring a state of disaster, which allows them a massive extra amount of legal abilities that they can now apply. Yeah, and legal. I'm saying legal deliberately because most of the time there's nothing lawful about what the fuck they do. We're under the disguise of that. Oh, it's a disaster. Yeah, they come along, they blow up your house, and then they say, "Oh, there's a disaster. We got to move you somewhere else because somebody blew up your house."
Have you not seen that one with houses? They're more or less saying, if we think your house is ill, we're going to knock it down.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I had put that in my notes because I did want to mention that.
It come to my head when you said about knocking houses down or with
For me, that was another extension. I think the guys in the UK column did mention this as part of the other stuff, yeah. But that is an extension from these new powers that they're giving the public health officers to do things like detain people. This, in effect, is setting up to be ready to do the what do they call it? Something acquisition. Compulsory purchase orders, compulsory purchase acquisition, which the state already well, certainly here in the UK, I know they do. I think it's probably the same pretty much every country, but the state claims the right to be able to force a purchase upon you because they need your property for whatever. So, for example, if they decide that forget all the protests against the HS2, they're going to build it anyway, and anyone who refuses to sell their property will just be issued with a compulsory purchase order, which means by the court, you are forced to sell your property to the government. If you refuse, they will literally just send people to take you away. Yeah, they will take you off the property and they will just claim it. So that is an extension of that kind of new powers that they're allowing themselves. If they now claim that, yeah, a public health officer decides that your building, the house that you live in, is a risk because of the corona walrus, then they can move in and demolish it. What? What the fuck? That is like far beyond compulsory purchase order. That's like the order's already been signed and they just go, oh yeah, we want it. That's ours now. We're going to smash it. And it also gives them, and this is classic example of dictatorship, it will give them the ability to completely destroy any nest of dissenters, which includes things such as fighting against the infodemic. So if there is somebody who is industrious enough to have their own little printing studio in their home, and they're churning out information on leaflets that they're handing out to the public, and the government decides that information is naughty stuff, so it shouldn't be allowed, they can send their officers to come along, designate that building as a risk, demolish it, and basically remove that node of the information sharing network, so they can crack down on dissenters and stop the spread of information. That's classic dictatorship. Yeah.
Certainly been doing it on Facebook. Shadow banning like hell, man.
Yeah.
But really bad.
The virtual environment is pretty much done. Yes, you can find alternative voices. We can still do like we're doing here, but the ability to switch us off whenever they decide to is there. It's built into the system. So it's not like I can, stand outside my virtual front door and virtually defend my channel home. Yeah, you can't do that in this technological system. So they can just press a button and disappear my channel and my content, or whatever platform somebody is using to do their thing. Yeah. So they can virtually demolish any dissenting voices whenever they choose to. But the fact that they're now talking about the physical buildings around you, or even your vehicle, because that was part of it. It wasn't just buildings, it was anything, including vehicles. So somebody who lives in a mobile home, if they say that's dangerous because it harbours the illness and you're a super spreader travelling around the country meeting loads of different... No, your vehicle's got to be trashed. That's just... Again, I'm back to just how loud is that dissonant bell ringing now for a lot of the people in the UK. I think this is why so many more people are starting to go, hang on a minute.
Yeah. That was my next statement. I was going to say I've noticed that there is a lot more weight, like quizzing things now. I wouldn't say awake, but fishing.
Yeah.
Well, because I can see the lunacy of it, and they're not stupid, and you will ask questions. I mean, when you're almost living in an autocratic system, isn't it? Like this is where we're heading. In the workplace as well, especially over the last few years. That's what they've created. These sort of what's a culture of fear in the workplace as well. With bosses and God knows what else going on. Then that emanates into the internet, and everything's controlled there, like you were saying, shut down, and censorship galore. Don't want information out, so off you go. And it's all us being sort of, if you like, softened up for this type of event that they've pulled now. So we comply, and how many people are obedient. But like I said early on, there's half that are in fear, the other half ain't, and that other half will grow to 3/4 and then the whole. And that's how it's going this way. We're not going to go that way. We're going the way that is the good way, and we're not going to be bought out. We're not going to buy into the fear and say it how it is, and not live in a prison. A prison of the mind, and the masking and the muzzling of humanity. You can fuck off. I
was going to say the best defense, or one of the simplest and quickest modes of communication that I've found is just smile.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think it sinks in for people, for some people maybe, that are wearing a mask. It's like I smile at them, and it's like I can see him smiling, and then hopefully the little cogs will be turning there, like, but he won't be able to see me smiling because I've got a mask on, so I can't return the communication. I had this with some of the local shop workers. I think I might have mentioned it in a text or comment at some point. There's the one in the local shop by me, and so far that's only one that sort of treated me with any kind of attitude, but I'm putting that down to that's what she's like anyway. Nearly every time I've encountered her in the shop, she's always been a bit grumpy and surly. She's just a grumpy person, I guess, whatever. But all the other people, the majority of them either at least nod as if to say hello to me, even though I can't see if they're smiling or not because they've got a mask on. But a few of them, I can see them look, and you see the little almost like twinkle of confusion in their eyes. And they're like, is he expecting something from me? Is he going to start ranting at me? Is he going to be a crazy person that starts shouting and screaming, oh, what's going on? No, I just smile. And if I get the opportunity, I might say a few words to them, might say hello to them, might ask how they're doing all right, you're working hard today, you know, just interacting with them on as normal a basis as possible.
Yeah.
Because I think one thing, so I mentioned the Anna Breeze channel last week. I think on Wednesday I was sort of pointing at it, saying, you know, for anybody out there who maybe feels like, you know, you're just coming across a lot of this information, or you're just starting to ask questions, or like Dean says, you know, you're just starting to quiz things, go, hang on a minute, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't look right, what's going on? Maybe you're going to get that effect where when you first start looking into some of the stuff like these questions that we're often talking about, you can have a very great sense of isolation because you feel like you've found something that nobody else is seeing. So it's almost like you're looking at a secret picture while you stood in a crowd of other people that can't see what you're looking at. Yeah. And it makes you feel separate from all those other people, like you're suddenly isolated, you're alone in the crowd. The reality is nothing like it. It's completely the opposite. The system loves to tell us, loves to put that idea in our heads that, oh, you've figured out a bit of information, have you? Oh, well, you're the only one. You're the lone crazed nutter that lives in your mum's basement. Yeah, that's not the reality. So if you look at some of the channels, like what Anna Breeze has been doing recently, where she's just taking public videos and uploading them, yeah? Public are sending her videos and she's uploading them. But I would add to that, you know, you've got to have that consideration that could be a deliberate play on the public. It could be what's usually referred to as a limited hangout, where she allows the public to vent their angst and concerns and worries, but really it's never going to amount to anything. Some of the videos I've watched recently have made me think there's definitely a few agents or something going on in here, because some of what the people are talking about is like, that's misdirection, that's misinformation, or that's deliberate disinformation to put you back onto a governmental narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got to do your usual critical thinking in the same way as you do with any other information, any other news outlet, the BBC or whatever it is. Yeah.
And I was just
critical thinking, but
yeah,
at the same time, the main point I wanted to raise, this is what I think I mentioned last Wednesday, was the majority of the people that are sending her videos are in the kind of frame of mind where maybe they've just discovered some of this information and they're in that freak out mode. They're in that freak out phase of what they've found out or figured out. So they're running around like, this, look, it's terrible what they're doing. Look at what they're doing. And it's all energy and exuberance and a bit of anger and a bit of frustration and all that kind of stuff. Whereas really, I think maybe it's just because for some of us, we've been looking at this stuff for so long. If anything, a lot of what's happening now is like a relief, because it's like a spot has finally burst. You know, you got one of them fucking annoying itchy spots, and it builds up and it builds up, and eventually it pops, and you're like, oh, thank fuck for that. Yeah, and you get that sense of relief, and the pressure is eased. And what I see is, I want to send her a video. I'm not going to, because I don't want to put stuff on a channel that potentially is just like advertising in effect. Yeah? But I want to send her a video. It's like, hey folks, whenever you see somebody else not wearing a mask, smile, cheer, sing a little song, do a little dance, because you just seen somebody else who's like you, has figured some of the shit out and he's not afraid. Yeah. If they are afraid, they built the courage to work through that fear. You should celebrate that. Don't fixate on the people who are wearing the masks and are giving you evil looks, and they want to at you. And what? No, look at the people who are not wearing the masks. Maybe wave, maybe shake their hand. If you're that inclined, maybe give them a hug. But celebrate the fact that you can now recognise each other quite readily. This is almost like the system, in a kind of Achilles heel fashion, has given us all the ability to finally sort of get a visual head count of how many people in your local community are somewhat awake or aware, or at least thinking for themselves.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Cookie, because I thought the ones who are more on it are the ones that are wearing those little blue mask things, like they wear in the hospital, and the ones who are really under fear are wearing those big cloth heavy ones all day. Those are the ones you covers your whole face, and I don't know how they're breathing in that fucking thing, to be honest. But I think they're the ones in fear. Those ones who wear those full mask sort of things, and those like if you have to get on the bus and put that silly little thing on, and you just pull it down, and you're breathing through your nose anyway. You're not restricting your breathing in any way. That's what most people are doing who are on this and thinking, nah, I can't wear that thing full face anyway myself. It really is very hard to breathe. And I know that oxygen depletion and things like this and bacteria that build up and you're breathing carbon dioxide back into your system, not oxygen. It has a detrimental effect, and we know this, and lots of doctors have spoken out. And again, it's just the narrative from the government and the mainstream media who are just pushing this bullshit, to wear them and keep wearing them, and they're good, and don't stop. And if you do see, and do all this, like attack each other for not wearing them, which is just ridiculous. You just say, look, I'm exempt, mate, shut your mouth and walk away. I'm not listening to your cack, or whatever,
As a side note, can I add in at that point? Because I've heard this argument made a few times. People say, like, well, there can't be anything wrong with wearing the masks because, for example, people in Hong Kong have been wearing masks for years. They've done it for years. They walk around wearing masks, and therefore, there can't be anything wrong with wearing masks. So that's a very cherry-picked and a very misaligned use of the information, of the facts, of the details of what you're talking about. Because yes, a lot of people in not just Hong Kong, a lot of Asian countries, their cultural norms give them that kind of sense of community care, such that they will cover their mouths when they're out in public, so that if they do sneeze or cough, they don't spit or blow snot onto anybody around them. It's not to prevent a virus spread directly. It's to spread, like surgical masks are meant to do. It's meant to prevent spittle and snot leaving you and landing on somebody else, yeah? And at the same time, they don't wear them all day. They don't wear them even for multiple hours at a time. Because it's not about protecting from a virus, they can't handle them. They can move them up and down, and it doesn't matter because it's about stopping spit and snot, not touch, not viral bacteria or anything like that. And also, if the very same people that use that kind of argument to claim that masks are okay because look, people over there wear them, if the masks are okay, and you are now suggesting to us that we have to wear masks to protect from a virus, then why did those very same people you're using in your example still suffer the same kind of numerical values from the virus that we're suffering? So the people in those Asian countries that you claim are, oh, it's okay to wear masks because they wear them all the time. So did their masks protect them from the dreaded crown walrus? No, it didn't, because look, they're reporting that they got cases and whatever as well.
And like I say, our own government have admitted it's about political lobbying that's causing us to wear these things, not the fact that they're effective and work, and the virus is out there anyway, if it exists at all. So it's useless anyway. So the whole thing's a joke and has been right from the start.
A visual reminder of fear. That's what it's about, giving you a visual fear totem, so that whenever you see someone wearing a mask, you instantly think, oh, infection, danger, illness, beware, danger, Will Robinson. Yeah. Puts the fear back in your mind when your fear had gone, because you'd realise that there isn't anything because you've been going about your day and no problem, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly.
But I just thought it's worth mentioning now, because a lot of the stuff that's been happening recently, and I know I've said in recent broadcasts, this week I'm just going to sort of talk about this, and I've talked about something like, whatever, but it's just I don't feel a need anymore to start digging through a lot of the kind of historical threads and information nodes and stuff like that, because what's happening right now is a literal demonstration. It is the emanation of all that stuff that we've been talking about for years. So for me now, that's like the dam is breaching, and we can look and point. I think I said this last week about fixating on Bill Gates and whatever. Yeah, we can point at some of the people that are part of these agendas. We can point at some of the things that are being done, like the changing of the laws and or legal statutes and things like that. But really, what is more important here is we are now on the cusp of the opportunity for those that are part of we are the ones we were waiting for.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to suggest that anyone's a superhero or that it's now your responsibility to save the world. None of that misdirection bullshit. But the difference is now you have an opportunity to do something as simple as smile barefaced to somebody who has been subjected to traumatization through fear manipulation. You can potentially help them save themselves just by smiling at them. Think about the power of that, yeah? People talk about the love connection and whatever. The simple act of smiling at somebody can help them get over the illness that has been put into them by the system, the poison that has been injected into them. So, yeah, there's a lot of shit happening at the moment, but think about how the just immense opportunity that there is now. Yeah, that should give you joy. That should give you confidence. That should give you courage and strength to look at this stuff and go, nah, fuck you, bunch of twats. You just revealed your game to everyone. You were all in on that poker game, but your ego meant you couldn't help yourself but go, oh, look at the cards I got. They're fucking good, aren't they? You're idiots. Well, I say that in just a disparaging fashion because I know they're not idiots, yeah, but it's just how else do you describe it? It's like, I know I could be cynical and say maybe there's a bit of a double bait switch thing going on or something, but no, they've moved so fast and so hard that they've done us a favour. Because that is like they've just gone and kicked in people's doors, and now all of a sudden the people are like, what the fuck are you kicking my door in? What the fuck are you doing? You ain't taking my dad away in a sack and giving me a receipt. No, fuck off. So maybe that's a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go in a bit. Yeah, just pushing on. I just want to say Dave's putting there fear, obedience, and gullibility. Definitely. Yeah. That's what's going on there.
Yeah, COVID, the Crown Obedience Verification ID. Oh, that's the chat room. Cool, thanks, sir. I didn't realise you were sharing the chat room. I'd only just spotted it.
It was that one.
Oh, right.
It was that one I was showing. That's that Earth United.
Yeah.
It's
if you could, I was just thinking, put a link for that in the side chat, or
yeah,
I'll grab the link.
I'll share that Wednesday as well, Dean. So
you better have a good look at it.
Yeah, we'll have a look through it.
What it's about. If you type in Earth United on YouTube as well, you'll get one of the channels. The other one's called A Warrior Calls. He's the main guy that's going to be taking over this. Now he's the common law expert. He's done a hell of a lot in Canada. He stopped using this, what they want to use now. He stopped families losing the kids just by knowing how to use the courts, using the words.
Bit like the free man stuff, yeah. Sort of.
No.
Different.
None of that.
Is it Canada? Is it Canada law?
Yeah, it's Crown, innit? Canada.
Yeah, still common law. Yeah.
Common law. Yeah.
It's what it is. It's saying forget the Magna Carta. It's a contract. We didn't sign it. Forget it. It's it all comes down and boils down to constructive fraud, because really your parents are tricked into signing you over to the government.
Yeah, for registration.
Yeah. You're a bonded slave, aren't you, really?
Yeah, a debt slave or a debt serf.
Yeah. 'Cause
You're
that's,
contracted to be a serf until you fulfill that bond.
it's definitely worth having a look over and listening to what they've got to say. They've got quite a lot together now. Realise you don't have to put it in, but you want like a mobile number and something like that just in case it goes dark, so you can keep in touch. But I've just sat back at the moment, just been watching them for a couple of months, see what happens, you know what I mean? But they seem alright. He's got a lot of videos up with quotes and things like that. He knows what he's doing, that Chris. That's a warrior calls, that's him here. That's him. It's really good.
Maybe we can cover it a bit more on Wednesday if you want to come back to it.
Yeah. They've said as well they'll come on shows and that if you want them on, just let them know and they'll come on. Just for getting word out there what they're trying to do and on that. I know you want to get off now, so
Yeah. Well, I just want to wrap it up to keep it roughly about the 2 hours, because I've learned through years of experience that seems to work best for most people.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks, Cookie. Cheers, and thanks to all in the chat as well. Thank you.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks for running the chat. Sorry I haven't done a roll call or a shout out this week. I know the usual suspects know who they are, so hello to all of you and thanks for joining in. And thanks to everyone who tunes in afterwards as a time traveller and watches the broadcast, the replay after the live. And yeah, we'll be back on Wednesday night with the reality chat on the reality chat channel. And Steve, I think, should be on Thursday night. Steve Tagoose doing the mystery show on Thursday night, plays some good guitar and sings some songs and talks about a lot of the stuff like we do. So yeah, you're not alone, and it's not all doom and gloom. And you now have the opportunity to be able to spot each other and go, "Hey, I can see your face." Yeah, they've been watching us for years and years, and now we can see each other and go, there you are. And you'll be surprised just how many people there are around you. Yeah. So don't be put off by all the half-faced mask wearers, and don't be tempted into falling into abusing them just because they've been sucked in by the fear. Yeah, that's a lot of that shit, like I've been trying to talk about the last couple of weeks, of them trying to set us against each other in two separate camps, the masks versus the anti-masks bullshit. It's like, nah. If people choose to wear a mask, that's their choice. But I don't think they should be forced or required to, because there's no justification for it. So we should all have the option. If you want to, that's up to you. You want to wear one, go for it. Yeah. But anyway. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Thanks for everyone joining in. Thanks to Gary. I know he couldn't hang around too late. And thanks to Dina and thanks to Peter. And we'll see you soon.
Cheers, everybody.
All right, keep singing. Cheers.